I'm getting a pimple right here, and I think I might die. A successful routine in the art of creating begins with having tools that are not only pleasing to look at, but inspire you to keep making. We all have that one friend that for whatever reason have nothing on their walls. Just blank, straight up serial killer vibes. And although their place can be clean or organized, it doesn't really say anything about them. This has always been something that was important to me when existing in a place for a prolonged period of time, leaving out little visual cues that help spark my own creative endeavors. And as photographers, one of the best sources of raw instant understanding are photo books. Collections of curated frames that are motivating as well as educational. Sometimes before going out to focus on a particular subject, the reminder of why I think that subject is beautiful in the first place can really help shape my confidence and manifest moments that I find interesting. These books serve as tangible reminders of the diverse ways creativity can appear, offering a constant source of visual stimulation and road to new ideas. Surrounding yourself with such objects creates an environment rich in self-expression, encouraging you to experiment, innovate, and capture your own ideas. But unfortunately, most of the best photography books out there are subject to either low print numbers or they're just way too damn expensive. And I'd say it's pretty common for most art books to be priced anywhere between $40 to $200, if not more, depending on the artist, quality of paper, and how many books they actually made. That's a bigger investment than starting Game of Thrones, which we all know those 2 last books aren't coming. And here I am still reading it anyway. And as a new photographer, the last thing you need to feel is discouraged when looking for ways to inspire yourself. This is an expensive hobby, but it really doesn't have to be devastating. Although my own collection of art and photo books is nothing to brag about, they still guide and shape my photos from time to time, but they aren't the only books I use. So I wanted to take some time and put together a list that talks about maybe some other options that we have in this space that not a lot of people are talking about online. Those amazing and classic books will always be there, but in the meantime, while you're still investing in yourself, maybe these alternatives can help you get to a journey faster. 5 books that aren't photo books. Cookbooks are an insane resource. I have others, but these are both yellow, so aesthetic. The thing that we take kind of for granted when it comes to books like these are how much time and effort that the photographers that they've hired for these books have taken to make the food look good. This is not just about what do I want to have for dinner tonight, but how much they've look at this picture. I'm sorry if you're a vegetarian, but this is beautiful. There's so much extra detail in this shot that doesn't necessarily need there to be, but it creates an atmosphere that's inviting and makes you want to make this food. They make the food look delicious. The lighting makes you feel like you're looking at something that you can create. It doesn't feel staged, like there's a sloppiness to it that feels like organic. Little Maddie Matheson book. This thing's insane. Some of these photos are almost fine art when you really look at them. The way that they've spaced everything out. And it's not just pictures of food in something like this. There are portraits, there's environment, stuff like hand placement in there. Forgive me for not finding a better word, but sauce, there's so much extra detail in these shots that help really tell a story beyond just this looks good. And for even this being a celebrity chef book, I think this book was only $20, maybe $15 online. Some of these other books you'll be able to find at any thrift store for $3 because people buy too many cookbooks all the time, give them away because their taste buds change, their diets change. Everything is constantly flowing when it comes to food. Something that's never really outdated is the techniques used to capture that food. So for someone that takes really big, open, usually a lot of scenery in their photos, looking at something like this that's very hyper-focused on such a small area and learning how to tell that story is very valuable to me. I just grabbed a few of these off my shelf, just kind of the first ones that come to mind. The first one I wanted to look at is just a book simply titled Trees, and this is a horticulture book that my dad used to use when he was a teacher. And there aren't a ton of photos in here, and sometimes it's more drawings than it is photography, but every once in a while there's these great moments that, for the most part, are supposed to be used for the classroom to help with these detail shots. It's mostly focused on what are different types of trees, defining small details that help you identify certain things about that tree. You're looking at the fruits, you're looking at the floral, you're looking at the leaves, you're looking at the branches, and there's all these great photos in here that I'm assuming were all shot on film because this is an older book. book that for whatever reason do inspire me sometimes to help find ways to pinpoint detail shots that really let the actual subject shine. You could pick a million different educational books. That's just one I have on hand. But something that I've really started to get into are just like camera history books. This one I found at a swap meet for I think $5, and it was a little nasty, had a lot of spider webs on it. The dude like didn't want it anymore, so I was like, would you do 3? And he's like, fine. And in reality, this is the entire line, the entire history of Nikon up until like 2005. So it even gets into the digital age here, but we start all the way back at the very beginning. And it's not just pictures of cameras in here, but kind of the first images that they were taking on these cameras. A book like this is actually more of an enabler now that I think about it, because it just makes me want more things. But you know, I find out about cameras I never knew about in here, why the changes were made from year to year. Like, what were they hoping to accomplish that they couldn't with their previous camera? You don't have to buy that specific book, you know? Like, I found also this one at a book off one day. I saw it in there a few times and I wasn't sure I wanted it, because instead of that being, this is just kind of this over-encompassing, generalized collection of different cameras over the years that are really beautiful to look at. There's not much photography in there, but sometimes just reading about something that I've never used before gets me excited to want to go out and at least try to capture something at least half as good as maybe what this camera was meant to do. A lot of these cameras we'll never see in the wild. It helps further educate you on not just what is popular on YouTube, like what someone is all of a sudden using and now 17 other channels also want to use that camera, is maybe focusing on what you find interesting outside of just that general conversation. Like, here's the Pentax. It's got all those cameras we know, but then it's got a plethora of all these other ones that you've never even seen before, or just variations of cameras that are popular, and maybe why that one wasn't as popular. Educational books are a little less inspiring for let's go out and I want to take this type of photo, and more so I'm just in the mood to go take photos. So that's why I keep these books around. As far as landscape photography goes, other than an Ansel Adams book, the best you can probably do is vacation books. This is just a basic Yosemite book, and I'm sure the photos in here are nothing crazy to write home about, but in so many few details are they able to just translate a story about what this place holds. And this is something that would have been sold at a gift shop, but I found this secondhand really cheap because they mass produce things like this. And I don't know if a book like this is something you'll want to hold on to for a long time. In fact, I don't know if most of these books are something you're going to want to hold on to for a long time. You may get what you need out of them and then return it back to the cycle of secondhand pretty quickly. There's at least a couple really interesting shots in here. Maybe ones that are very similar to something you've actually taken before. You can hyper-focus on why something like this would be printed and why it would be used almost to like advertise these places. What about this shot really speaks to you? You know, here's one I found that Kronberg that I've never been here. I don't know that I'll even ever want to go here, but every couple of shots in this book are beautiful and almost something that you would see on a YouTube channel today. They're not a typical destination type of photography. There's something really interesting and moody about them that I really love. So like, this is definitely a book, even though I may not ever go to this place. A lot of the ways that this photographer is kind of choosing to describe and showcase these locations is super interesting to me, and is really, it's a great lesson for me in how to better focus and capture a place you've never been to before. This was something secondhand, super cheap. I think it was like maybe $1 or $2. I'm not sure why. I really, really like the photography in here though. Like, look at this shot. I don't know about you, but that's killer. And this is just like a little bonus vacation book. I've had this book for almost 15 years. And I don't know why you would need to have this book when something like Reddit exists. But when I was first starting out and getting into the groove of like going different locations and trying to find interesting places that are not the typical destination, a lot of these kind of are now. You know, this is the book where I found Bombay Beach, where I found Salton Sea, where I found a lot of weird folk art type locations across California, like the Bubblegum Alley, the Madonna Inn, all these places that are landmarks today. Someone took the time to curate this. There's one of these weird California, weird Nevada. There's one for almost, I think, every 50 states. And I'm sure they're cheap online still because it's a pretty old book. I don't know that you need something like this, but you need something that makes you want to get out there and take pictures. And for me, when I was younger and very bad at photography, this was something that got me out there. I think we've all walked into a Savers and seen so many World War II books for no reason. This first one is something called The West. My buddy Alex, who you've seen on the channel, gifted me this book for Christmas last year.
What are you looking for today? A Leica for $3.
I think he thinks I want to be a cowboy or something, and who doesn't want to be a cowboy? A book like this is definitely more so the telling of a time than it is an inspiring piece of focused art. It is really interesting to see the birth of photography at a time like this in that late 1800s period where no one really knows why we have cameras, but we know we want to use them, and it's really fascinating to see what we chose to take a picture of. Like, here's a picture from William Clark, and he decided that this vista that he found was beautiful. And for whatever reason, he just wanted to take this picture because he wanted to remember this moment. And then I've got this Battle of Britain book that I also found super cheap somewhere. Just like a lot of people like to take pictures of classic cars, for whatever reason, I love pictures of classic planes. There's something about the design and the way that they shape the frame that is so interesting to me. I feel so disconnected from this time, the way people dress, the way people pose. Every once in a while, you'll find a photo like this. A photo of a man taking a swig from a flask, and you just instantly connect with the humanity in it. The weird awkwardness of some of these photos because the idea of posing isn't really a thing. In the West book, there's a lot more like just group shots where everyone's very aware that you're taking a photo, but there's something really candid about this book. In no ways am I a huge history buff, but there's something really fascinating about a time that we have no connection to, and seeing how the photos shape our interpretation of that time, and then it helps inform, well, what pictures am I taking right now, and how in 100, 200 years, if there's even the idea of people still looking at your photos, what will they take away from that? What can you capture about this time that's very distinctly now, other than a photo of a Cybertruck? So I've got a couple here that I just kind of pulled off the shelf really quickly. Obviously something like Ed Hopper has been talked to at incredible length on the internet. His work is so crazy influential when it comes to photography and understanding framing, composition, and light. So I won't go too deep into something like this just because a lot of people have. But this is such a priceless resource that if you have not looked at any of his work before, please just give it a little try. So I wanted to pull something a little different to kind of contrast that book. The first one I picked is this Disney Villains book that is from the 90s, I believe, that my mom got for me when I was a kid. And beyond just the typical frames that you would normally see as behind the scenes, you also get so much of the creative process. It's not just like temp frames or proof of concept, but so much focus on the composition of one frame and how that story is going to be told. The look, the mooding, the color choice, like this is all things that can help inform you when you're out on a shoot. What kind of color tones do you want your image to have? Do you want this to be a cooler, a darker, a warmer, a clearer scene? Say what you will about animation, but there is something about how quickly they need to tell you something visually without just telling you through the dialogue. And I think there's something interesting about something that is truly organic and human-made in informing your capturing of what reality actually is. This is almost a cliche to say, but I think most photographers have such an interest in painting, in drawing, and there's such a want to be able to create something like that from scratch that just some of us don't possess. You know, my girlfriend is incredibly talented when it comes to animation, sketching, design, all of that stuff, and I don't have any of that in my body. And photography is kind of as close as I'll ever get. And then this is just fun, How to Draw Robots and Spaceships, the 70s art book. There's something about something older that isn't informed before the internet in design. Tell me you don't want that on your Instagram feed. It's so killer. These are not the only types of visual stimulants I could have picked, but they are ones that I've used pretty regularly recently to help inspire and inform certain work. And the best part is, almost all of these options, you could find some variation of them in the wild. Sure, thrift stores have not been the best over the last couple years when it comes to cameras or gear. I mean, it kind of seems like they're all just going on eBay, picking the highest price, and that's what they're selling a broken camera for these days. But there are those exceptions, and they don't really seem to have a grasp on books yet because they just assume that it's clutter, not collector's items. And if I've missed anything that you use and you feel is valuable, then leave it in the comments below because we're not here to gatekeep, we're here to help each other. You might be thinking tools like Instagram or Flickr if people still use that, are the best ways to look at new work and inform your own. But something that I really don't like about social media is how easy it is to switch back to your own profile and then start comparing shot to shot. And now you're no longer learning and being inspired, you're focusing and depreciating your own value. There's something really different about holding something physical in your hand, analyzing that print, and learning from it. And the best part about these books, it really doesn't matter if no one finishes them. George, what's happening?